The sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
If Ben Simmons developed a free throw shot, not even a jump shot, he'd average 25 a game. He's that gifted. He's that special of a talent. His problem is he's scared to shoot. And the 76ers and the 76ers fan base is to blame? And you don't want to come back because you can't deal with them? That's a heart check, ladies and gentlemen. That's a heart examination right there. It ain't about skills no more. Because this brother is LeBron James part 2 if he developed any kind of jump shot or even a free throw shot. That ain't about skills. That's about heart.
Yes.
He's the best.
Yes. Can we talk about the 70s porn music playing in the background of that Stephen A. Smith rant?
What? How great is it going to be when he starts breaking out hockey takes?
Kirill Kaprizov.
Yeah.
This brother right here.
Connor
That's the
McDavid.
most talented brother I've ever seen on ice.
How can the best player in hockey not be in the playoffs and advancing all of the time? And by the way, I'd like to talk about 70s porn.
Exactly. I'd like to talk about 70s
I'd like to talk
porn.
about. I'd like to just 70s porn. Very different.
Welcome to Mackie and Judd, 70s porn connoisseurs here, and daily Minnesota sports.
No, you don't want to be a
entertainment.
70s porn connoisseur. Believe me.
Well, it takes one to know one.
Yeah.
Judd.
Yes, it does.
So we've done so many shows on Ben Simmons going back. I feel like Declan dug up at one point the first episode we did on this, like during the playoffs, where we just kind of floated, hey, if you put the pieces together logically, it actually makes sense for the Wolves to go after Ben Simmons. And for the first month, it was like clickbait, reckless speculation, clickbait. And now I checked again this morning, according to ActionNetwork.com, the Wolves are the odds-on favorite still to trade for Ben Simmons, or a plus 400. I think the Kings and the Blazers are still in there. But more information came out yesterday, so I would love to just quickly summarize the new information that came out, and then we can talk about what does this mean for the Timberwolves and their potential chances to trade for Ben Simmons. You guys, are you ready?
So it's reckless speculation on Thursday on a Wednesday.
That is correct. That is correct. Yes.
I love it when it comes early. It's like Christmas. I love it when it's early.
Game, JR.
All right, my sources told me. Sources previously told ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski that Simmons had sought a trade out of Philadelphia, and that Simmons' agent, Rich Paul, and Sixers management had met earlier this summer. But on Tuesday, this story advanced. Sources told Wojnarowski that Simmons will not report to the opening of Sixers training camp next week, and he intends to never play another game for the Philadelphia 76ers. So I think we kind of assumed this, but now it's like, right. We're less than a week before training camp, and Ben Simmons' camp is saying, just in case everyone was all caught up in the first 2 weeks of football and forgot, my guy does not want to play for the Sixers anymore, even though he's under contract for like 4 more years. This interesting nugget came out as well, because the Warriors have been sort of in the mix, and there's been some discussions. The Warriors owner, Joe Lacob, came out and said, quote, in some ways, he doesn't really fit what we're doing. He makes a lot of money. And can he finish games? I don't know. Can he even say that publicly about another team's player?
No, I think that's tampering of some sort.
Right.
I'm guessing he's going to get fined for that.
I don't think you can.
I don't
think you can like talk outwardly about. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to trade for him. I don't know if he fits us. I don't know if he's clutching it.
I don't think you're supposed to talk about players that aren't on your team
unless you're praising them or something.
Well, sure, but I'm saying I don't think you're supposed to like assess them.
Yeah. And then ESPN's Bobby Marks, friend of the show, Bobby Marks, front office insider. Mm-hmm. He poses a couple different things here. Why hasn't Simmons been traded yet? The simple answer, because Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal aren't available yet. Philadelphia's president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey, has proven 3 things over his long, successful run as an executive. He isn't afraid of awkward situations. He isn't going to make a deal for the sake of making one. And he's constantly trying to swing trades for stars. Until there's any movement with Lillard or Beal, or until another team comes in with a huge offer for Simmons, it seems likely Simmons will remain on Philadelphia's roster for the foreseeable future. Doc Rivers, Sixers coach, went on First Take this morning. This just happened like 10 minutes ago, and basically said, yep, he did ask out, but we want him back. He said flat out, we think we can win a championship with Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid came out a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I know this is all being misconstrued. And Doc Rivers said this morning, my comments are being misconstrued. We love Ben Simmons. I don't know what everyone's talking about. So that's where things stand this morning. What do you think all of it means for the Timberwolves, Judd?
You know what? We just saw an example of an executive whose office is in St. Paul, showing great patience while the storm brewed around him. Bill Guerin, while GM, kept himself in the eye of that storm, calm, cool, and collected. As Declan shows you the player that patience paid off for. If you are watching us on YouTube, that is Dollar Bill Carrill.
$45 million Bill Carrill.
Yeah, and eventually, but Billy Guerin sat there with that contract in front of him and said, "This is your contract." And they're like, "Oh, I don't know about that. We'll see." And eventually, they said, "Okay, we got to make a move. We're gonna sign. We're gonna sign the contract that you wanted." And I think that there's a case to be made that friend of the show, Gerson Rosas, in Minneapolis, is doing the same thing, not with a player on his team, obviously, but patience is the key here. Because, Phil, you mentioned, I think probably the most important thing that you said about this entire Simmons situation is Bradley Beal and Dame aren't available yet. And we don't know when they're going to be. So this is all about patience. And Daryl Morey can go star hunting all he wants, but he's stuck with a player here with a current contract that's very significant, no desire to play for his team that has nothing to do with money, so you can't smooth this over if you are the Sixers, and a player who is completely disenchanted with the franchise, but probably more importantly, the city and the fan base. So I think that as painful as it might be, and torturous at times, I think patience is the play, just like what Bill Guerin did. I think Gerson Rosas, eventually the Sixers are going to say, we got to do something. We can get a good package. It's just not the package that we want. But Ben Simmons, if he is willing to forfeit paychecks, which it seems like he's willing to, Ben Simmons has made it very clear that he's not going back there. And if you're the Sixers, that's a problem.
So you mentioned he's willing to forfeit paychecks. I believe the NBA rules state that once training camp starts, if you're an under contract player, if you decide to not show up, you can start to be fined 400. Let me get this right. 1/145th of your paycheck each day. And what does he make? About $35 million divided by 145. Okay, so they can fine him about $240,000 a day starting on like the 28th here. I think training camp. I think media day is the 27th, which is mandatory, and then the 28th. But I think to all the things you just said about the Sixers and being patient, I think they almost have to cave. And I get that, as Bobby Marks, friend of the show, laid out, hey, Daryl Morey's not the one to cave. Like he'll sit in the uncomfortableness of a situation, and he's not just going to trade someone for 25 cents on the dollar. But if you put yourself in his shoes for a second, you're in a win now window. You had the best record in the Eastern Conference. People forget that about Philadelphia. And by the way, Ben Simmons was a big reason why they had the best record in the Eastern Conference. And your star player, Joel Embiid, isn't guaranteed any semblance of health beyond right now. Like, that guy misses 15 or 20 games a year as it is. And as a big guy with leg issues, and he set out 2 seasons with foot issues early in his career, he's probably not going to be playing like well into his 30s. So they need to cash in right now on the Joel Embiid era, if you will. Do they really want to sit here and play out this drama into November, December, January in a season in which they're trying to flat out win a championship this year?
No, they don't. And that's where I think Gerson's patience could pay off, because eventually I think they're going to feel the need to have to trade him and get a good package. And if Gerson especially can get a third team involved, that's very doable. It's just not the package that they're going to want. But keep in mind, the difference between Daryl Morey and Ben Simmons in the situation that the Rockets dealt with James Harden, the Rockets were going nowhere at that point. Like, it was done. James Harden wanted out, but he wanted out from a bad team. And so you are in a position there to be like, okay, screw it. I'll be patient because until I get the package we stink. What you said about the Sixers is right. You don't have that, like the distraction. If you're a bad team and there's distractions and star player sits out, yeah, it mildly sucks, but it is what it is. And you lose games either way. The Sixers don't have that. The Sixers have a win now. Embiid wants to win now, and distractions to good teams matter. So I think it's a very different situation that those two teams faced and that Morey faces, because in Philadelphia, this is going to matter. In Houston, by that point, with Harden, I don't think it did.
Another question that keeps popping up. I think there's a lot of skeptical Wolves fans. The guy melted in the fourth quarter of all these playoff games. Had a historically bad free throw shooting performance. He missed more free throws in one playoff month than Steve Nash missed in his entire career. Why do you guys? And he makes like $35 million, and it's an ironclad contract for 4 years. Why would you want him? What do you? And maybe you. I don't know. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts. Maybe you're souring on it, but how do you answer that question? Why should the Wolves even be interested in Ben Simmons? Question.
Dex, go ahead.
Number one, the dude plays elite defense. He's a first-team All-NBA defender. This team, the Wolves, for years, for the last, especially in the Cat era, even when Levine was here, when Wiggins was here, it was mostly fun to watch. They weren't always great, but they were fun to watch because they were an offensive team that could fly up and down the court, right? But they're a sieve. They're a sieve on defense. It was like watching the New Orleans Saints in the middle of the decade when they're going to put up 500, 600 points, but their defense stunk and they were perpetually 7-9 for like 3 or 4 year stretch. I want to see this team actually have good defenders, and Ben Simmons is an amazing defender. What Stephen A. just said, he is a good player. He is obviously a good player. If he can figure out his shot, he turns into a great player. You're not just talking about a nice player. You're talking about a legitimate top 10, well-rounded player. He's worth that to me. So they need more of that kind of guy because the Timberwolves for years have lacked serious defenders. So if they can keep Cat and Ant, I still think eventually you have to trade D'Lo to make this trade happen. I just don't see how you fit all four of those guys on this team. But Ben Simmons brings something the Wolves haven't had in a long, long time. Yeah,
I think he's exactly right. And look, his shooting worries me. Like I'm not going to say that his past career problems don't concern me. But yeah, if you bring a very talented guy who is a lockdown defender to a team that has previously played no defense, and a lot of that is effort, it's intriguing. And the one thing I do think Simmons' problems are mental, but I would be curious if you transplanted him to Minnesota, what would happen? Because there is no doubt in my mind that part of his problem is he's playing in Philadelphia. Like, think about that. It starts to go. I mean, if you have a mental hang-up, okay, and you go to the toughest possible town that you can and that hang-up becomes a problem, it's not like clear the mechanism and I'll be fine. It's like, oh my God, I'm in Philadelphia and they're booing me and I can't shoot. And now it gets worse and worse and worse. So I would be curious to see what the problem, how he did here. But number one, just from a selfish standpoint, I think it'd be fun as hell.
Yeah.
I want I mean, I gave you guys the stat a couple days ago. What, one playoff appearance in 18 years or something like that? Mm-hmm. Anything that makes them relevant and fun to follow. I mean, the NBA is one of the funnest leagues to follow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, the Wolves have been kind of for the last 3 years, going back to when they traded for Jimmy Butler.
Yes.
And then they had the falling out with Jimmy Butler. For the last 4 or 5 years, as irrelevant as they've been for the majority of our existence, they've been, like, oddly enough, in the middle of some of these big moves and discussions, and the number one pick, Anthony Edwards, and the D'Lo trade, like. Now they're the number one odds-on favorite to land Ben Simmons. So from a fun fact, the Wolves are like inexplicably among the most fun teams right now. Sort of once the games start, then that becomes less fun because they lose. But yeah.
But think about a roster with Karl Anthony Towns, Ant.
Is in a Timberwolves uniform. Number one, he's better than people give him credit for. He's better than people remember at the end of the playoff run. Joel Embiid's one of the lack of shooting. There's a lot of great players in the NBA that don't shoot very well. historically. Even in today's modern NBA. Giannis doesn't shoot well. Now, when he needed to make free throws in the biggest games, he did, and that's the biggest difference. I'm not comparing Giannis to Ben Simmons, but, Ben Simmons scores almost all of his points inside 10 feet. Giannis scores a lot of his points inside 10 feet, and people, if Ben Simmons were to, I think, rise up a little bit more in the fourth quarter and overtime of some of these big games, it wouldn't be like, why doesn't he shoot more threes? It would just be, he scores inside, and okay, like when he needs to make free throws, he makes free throws. Number two, I think he would just be a perfect fit along with Cat and Ant to what Judd just said. And I think he's a better overall player than D'Lo's a better offensive player. D'Lo's a better shooter, but I think Ben Simmons is a better overall player. And I think Ben Simmons is a better overall fit with Ant and Cat. The Wolves are trying to get Simmons without giving up D'Lo. If they can do that, that would be amazing. I just don't know if you're going to be able to swing that financially and just from an assets perspective. But number three, this might be my biggest reason. We always sit here and talk about, the future and, how can the Wolves get a third piece to go along with this? And they're never going to be players in free agency. I don't care about the future draft picks anymore. This is basically the perfect storm to get an impact player. Like, I don't care about their 2022 first-round pick. They've got Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and Jaden McDaniels, and you're probably going to have to trade Jaden McDaniels to get Ben Simmons. But, they've got enough young talent. I don't give a rip if they don't have a 2024 first-round pick. If you can't get a player like Ben Simmons or better in free agency, the only way that you can, and if you don't have even the cap space to think about getting a player like that in free agency, which they don't, the only way you can do it is via trade. And Bobby Marks highlighted this on his ESPN.com article that came out, that if this was a free agency situation, and even if the Wolves did have cap space, Ben Simmons wouldn't choose the Timberwolves. But you can sort of demand and force Ben Simmons to come play for you by swinging a trade, and then, okay, all right, well, I guess this is my new reality. I'm here for the next 4 years. And you know what? I kind of like Chris Finch as a coach. I can kind of lay low here. The fans aren't going to be as
and I never get
despicable. And yeah, I will say those fans in Philadelphia are terrible, but they have a point. I mean, I would be frustrated with Ben Simmons too for what he did in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I think both sides share blame, but this is the only way to get a player like this. You're not going to get him in free agency, and so even if he's not perfect, he's got some flaws. This dude shot 56% from the field last year. That's pretty good. It's not shooting from beyond 10 feet ever. 90% of his shots are 10 feet and in, but he's not this monstrosity offensively that people paint just because he can't shoot.
And right or wrong, when's the last time that this show objected to going big game hunting? When's the last time? Now,
Reckless speculation.
we've criticized the results, but we have always prefaced that by saying we never said it was a bad idea. We encouraged it. Kirk Cousins, Josh Donaldson,
Go get it.
Suter and Parisi. We have always said, you know what? It's way more fun when you attempt to make yourself relevant, misguided or not in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Big game hunting.
I like it. Do you guys want some of the recent trade proposals and scenarios?
Reckless
Obviously.
speculation.
Being thrown out there right now.
Oh, this is on a Wednesday too.
Right.
I'm so looking forward to tomorrow now. It's an appetizer.
Yeah, Doogie will join us tomorrow for some actual reckless speculation. Official. This is like appetizer.
It's an
reckless
appetizer.
speculation.
Yeah.
Lappy. Little tapas.
I'll take the calamari. You know what? Plate of nachos too.
So here's a handful of different trade scenarios. A couple from ESPN.com, one from our friend Dane Moore, presented by our friends at PXG. All right, Ben Simmons, maybe he hasn't had time to golf this offseason because he's been working on his jump shot and his free throws. Hopefully he's just been doing that for 10 hours a day. But if you are into fall golf, which I know Declan and I are, Declan's been out there shooting in the 90s all the last month.
I've improved my shot, Ben Simmons.
PXG is a golfer's paradise. PXG Minneapolis and Southdale Center. You can check out the new Gen 4 clubs, which are the best performing clubs PXG has ever made, and some of the fall apparel that's in store as well. PXG.com/Minneapolis. All right.
Reckless speculation.
So we're going to take away Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. There are some, obviously, trades floating around that are pretty straight up. Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons and a pick or something. But to this point, those guys are not available. Dane Moore has this one, or this sort of thought on what it would take for the Timberwolves to acquire Ben Simmons. He had this on his podcast recently. He thinks it's going to be multiple first-round picks, either lightly protected or unprotected. Jaden McDaniels, and then 2 of these 4. Malik Beasley, Taurean Prince, Patrick Beverley, D'Angelo Russell. Now, if it's Russell, then, because he makes about twice as much as these other players make, then the finances are different. But you'd almost certainly need a third team involved here, either to help with salary matching and or to provide Philadelphia with a suitable star perimeter player, because it sounds like they don't want D'Lo. So that's what I mean. And Dane, by the way, isn't just like making this stuff up. He's been in conversations with people in the league and with the Timberwolves, and I don't think he's gotten the exact offers necessarily, but I don't think Dane is just licking his finger and sticking it in the wind and saying, this is kind of what I think. I think this is educated speculation on his part. What do you guys think?
Okay, that's interesting, because I don't see, unless they wanted D'Lo, which to your point, they probably don't. I don't see any way that trade is workable with like 2 of the, like if it's Beasley and Taurean Prince, right, and draft picks, then
There's
you're
got to
right.
be a third team.
Then there's got to be a third team. And look, if I'm Philadelphia and I don't want D'Lo, then I think there just has to be a third team, period. But
The perfect third team is Washington.
Yeah, but
that's what I don't understand. What is Bradley Beal? Bradley, dude, this is your chance. You can go play in Philadelphia. This is I don't know why this hasn't happened yet. Bradley Beal to Philadelphia.
Yep.
Ben Simmons to Minnesota.
Yep.
And then a bunch of rebuilding chips over to Washington.
Yes.
Who loses? I don't understand. Like, Bradley Beal, dude, it's been 9 years or whatever. You've been sitting there.
Is this a Bradley Beal problem, a Washington problem, or a combination problem? Because I don't know. I mean, all I know is that Washington has been basically a dumpster fire of a franchise on and off for years and years and years. But yeah, it seems really weird.
Like why would he play there this year?
I know, but I get the Dame thing, right? Like, Dame's been a Blazer for a long time. The Blazers don't feel like they're going somewhere right now, but they have certainly been a very respectable franchise.
Yeah, they're in the playoffs every year.
So, I sort of get that. Hey, let's try and make it work. I totally get that one. The Beal thing and the Washington thing, I have no idea. And Washington at some point in time just needs to punt and be like, okay, strip her down.
Yeah, and why? And again, on the Beal front, on the Washington front, strip her down. But on the Beal front, why are you not just forcing this to happen? Do you what are you guys going to do this season? It's so weird. It's the perfect 3-team trade scenario, and I think the Timberwolves could probably swing that without involving D'Lo. Because if Philadelphia doesn't want D'Lo, they want Beal. And if Washington doesn't want D'Lo because they're going to go into a rebuild, then getting that third team involved actually makes it more likely you could acquire Ben Simmons without giving up one of your 3 best players. The Kings right now, this is ESPN.com, has some hypotheticals here.
Reckless speculation.
So the Sixers need shooting and they need perimeter players. So the trade proposal here is Ben Simmons to the Kings for Buddy Hield, excellent 3-point shooter. Yep. Tyrese Halliburton, rookie last year, excellent shooter. And then Marvin Bagley III, who I saw his name floated in potential Wolves trades earlier this offseason too. So you get 3 young players with Halliburton and Hield. You get 2 sniper shooters that can stretch the floor, and Seth Curry is still on the Sixers. So you'd have these ridiculous shooters with Joel Embiid doing his Embiid thing. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Then they have a Blazers CJ McCollum swap where it's like McCollum and it would be like Ben Simmons for McCollum and a pick or something. But to this point, I'm guessing Daryl Morey is still holding out for Damian Lillard. At one point, does he, swallow hard and go down the CJ McCollum path? McCollum's never been an all-star. He's a good player, but he's never been an all-star. And then this is a new one. I've not seen this one floated out. Chicago Bulls, Zach LaVine.
Ooh, that's intriguing.
Reckless.
I haven't seen that.
It would be Zach LaVine and like something else, but mostly a Zach LaVine, Ben Simmons straight up swap. And I think Levine just signed another contract, so I think he's in that 30
He
million
did
range
last.
somewhere
Yeah,
there.
I think last season, during last season.
Excellent offensive player, ridiculously good shooter. I could see him really thriving in Philadelphia. Defense optional, but they've got some other good defensive players they could put around him.
Yeah, you know what? If that was on the table, that's if I'm the Sixers, that's really intriguing.
Yeah. So you can kind of see how other teams would be able to, like the Kings and the Bulls, if they were willing to give up those players and if they wanted Ben Simmons, they're probably better equipped to do a straight up 1-for-1 trade.
Yep.
The Wolves, if Philadelphia doesn't want D'Lo, the Wolves are almost certainly going to have to get a third team involved, and then that third team has to have a star perimeter player. Could you get the Bulls involved? Maybe, but the Bulls aren't. The Bulls are looking to get to the playoffs, so any move they make would be to help their current team or to at least break even. They're not going to want a bunch of rebuilding pieces. So I don't know. Very interesting.
No, you're right.
Reckless speculation.
The former Bullets. Get the former Bullets involved. You're exactly
It
right.
makes
That's
sense.
that's the one that makes the most sense. They've got nothing that what are they pursuing
I don't know.
right
dude.
now? I
It's
mean,
so weird. I mean, they traded for Russell Westbrook last year.
yeah, I know.
They're just delusional.
They fired their coach again. Scotty Brooks got fired this
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah, that's just a weird franchise.
Dude. They're like the idiot in your fantasy league where it's like, guys, we got a 3-team trade here. This works for everyone. And they're like, oh, no, I can still win the league.
Yep.
No, dude, you're in last place. You're 0-8 head-to-head.
Yep.
Just trade. So, all right, that's the latest on Ben Simmons.
Reckless
Love
speculation.
the reckless speculation on Wednesday when it's really coming on Thursday too.
It's so great. Yeah, much more tomorrow with our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson. So, all right, we got to get to some write that down predictions and an accountability session here on Mackie and Judd. Stick with us.